It's late. The house is finally quiet. And you're doing that thing so many of us do now. Just one more glance at the phone. One more headline. One more clip. One more story about what might go wrong. And even if your day was fine, even if nothing big happened, you notice your chest feels a little tight. Not dramatic tight, just that steady pressure. Like your mind is bracing for something. Maybe you've noticed this too. Your life can be objectively okay, and yet your mind keeps scanning the room for what's wrong. And if you're in that season of life somewhere between midlife and older adulthood, where you've carried work, family losses, responsibilities, health changes, you might not even call it anxiety anymore. You just call it normal. But there's a quiet question hiding underneath that normal. What am I feeding my mind every day? Because the mind doesn't only think. It learns. It adapts. It becomes shaped by what it consumes. And it consumes a lot. Conversations, memories, old regrets, a lifetime of be strong and don't make a fuss and keep going. So tonight, or whenever you're listening, I want to offer a gentler approach. Not a promise that you'll never worry again. Not a push to stay positive. Just a simple Buddhist reflection. If the mind is being fed fear all day long, it becomes very good at finding fear. If the mind is being fed scarcity, not enough, not safe, not ready, it becomes very good at spotting what's missing. Not because you're broken, because you're human. And in Buddhism, being human isn't a failure. It's the starting point. So, let's explore how the mind gets trained, and how it can be trained in a different direction, little by little, without force. A short story from American life. There's a moment in American history I return to when I think about this. In the late 1920s and into the 1930s during the Great Depression, people lived with a kind of uncertainty that didn't take breaks. Jobs vanished. Savings disappeared. The future felt thin, unstable, and I don't want to romanticize that time. Suffering is suffering. Loss is loss. But something else was real too. Many people learned how to stay alive inside their own minds by returning to small, steady goodness. Not because life was easy, but because the mind needed something steady to hold. A warm cup, a small shared meal, a neighbor showing up, a child laughing for a few seconds, a quiet breath on a porch. Not an escape from hardship, just a way to not drown in it. And today most of us aren't living through the Great Depression, but the mind can still feel like it's living in constant emergency, because modern life feeds it emergency, and the mind believes what it eats. A short story from the Buddha's life. Now, let's bring this closer to the heart of this channel, the life of the Buddha. Before he was called the Buddha, he was Siddhartha, a human being, trying to understand why the heart suffers. The old stories say he lived a sheltered life for a while, not because he was weak but because the people around him tried to protect him from pain. But eventually, he saw what no one can avoid forever: aging, illness, death, and the deep unease that can live inside a human life, even when things look fine on the outside. And what struck Siddhartha wasn't only the suffering out there. It was how the mind responded. How it grabbed, resisted, panicked, blamed, ran. He began to see something simple. Suffering isn't only about what happens. It's also about what the mind does with what happens. And that's where training begins. Not in controlling the world, but in understanding the mind. The mind as a garden. There's an image that can help here. An image that shows up again and again in Buddhist teaching. The mind is like a garden, not a courtroom, not a performance review, not a machine you have to fix. A garden. Whatever you water grows. Whatever you keep planting returns. And the tricky part is, we plant seeds all day long without noticing. A harsh thought toward ourselves. A replayed argument. A fear-based story about the future. A quiet resentment. A spiral of, I should've. Those are seeds. And they grow into a certain kind of inner climate. A climate that can feel tense, suspicious, restless. But there are other seeds too. Patience. Kindness. A willingness to pause. Gratitude for something small and real. A softer inner voice. Those grow too. So, The question isn't, how do I never think negative thoughts? The question is more honest. What am I repeatedly planting? What am I repeatedly feeding? In this episode, I want to offer 7 gentle seeds. Not as commandments, not as homework, just as possibilities. And you don't have to take all 7. Even 1 is enough to begin changing the inner weather. Seed. 1. Name the seed. The first practice is almost surprisingly simple. When a thought arrives, silently name what kind of seed it is. Not to judge yourself. Not to shame yourself. Just to see clearly. Because so much of our suffering comes from being inside the thought without realizing we're inside it. So you might notice a thought like, they don't respect me. And you name it hurt. I'm falling behind. And you name it fear. I can't believe I did that. And you name it shame. And sometimes naming it creates just enough space to not automatically water it. Just enough space to breathe. In Buddhism, this is part of waking up from the trance of the mind. Not fighting the mind, just seeing it. And that seeing alone can be a relief. Seed. 2. Choose your inputs. The second seed is about what you allow to enter your mind. In Buddhist practice, there's a simple idea. The senses are like doors. What you see, what you hear, what you read, what you scroll, the conversations you stay in. All of it enters the mind and becomes part of the garden. So if the mind is constantly flooded with outrage, fear and drama, it's not a personal failing that you feel unsettled. It's cause and effect. And this doesn't mean you have to live in a bubble. It just means noticing dosage. Some people start the day with headlines before they've had a sip of water. And then they wonder why their body feels tense by 9 a.m. So here's a gentle question. What is one input that calms your nervous system just a little? Maybe it's a short walk outside. Maybe it's a quiet cup of coffee without noise. Maybe it's a few minutes listening to something kind. Maybe it's sitting by a window and letting your eyes rest on a tree. Small doesn't mean meaningless. Small means doable, and doable is how the mind changes. Seed. 3. Turn off autopilot. The third seed is about what happens when life pokes you. Someone says something sharp. A family member pushes a familiar button. A bill shows up. A health worry crosses your mind. And suddenly you're reacting, not choosing. That's autopilot. Autopilot isn't evil. It's often a survival pattern. Sometimes, it's been running for decades, but it has a cost. So, the practice is simple. When you notice you're reacting, pause and find your feet. Feel the ground. Feel the weight of your body. And take one slow breath, not to become a different person, but to come back to the present. Then ask, what's the thought behind this reaction? Is it I'm not safe? Is it I'm not valued? Is it I'm going to be alone? You don't have to solve it in that moment. Just seeing it is already a form of freedom. Because when autopilot becomes visible, it becomes optional. And that's a big shift. Seed. 4. Reframe the hard moment. The fourth seed is one of the deepest, and it can take time. Buddhism begins with a plain truth. Life includes suffering. Not as punishment. Not as a mistake. Just because life changes, bodies change, relationships change, plans change, people leave, workplaces shift. Dreams don't always arrive the way we pictured, and our instinct is to resist, to tense up, to argue with reality. But there's another possibility. What if hardship is not only an enemy, but also a teacher? Not a teacher you asked for, not a teacher you like, but a teacher that reveals what you cling to. So, in a hard moment, you might ask, what is this asking me to release? What is this asking me to soften? Maybe it's asking you to release the fantasy that you can control everything. Maybe it's asking you to soften the belief that you have to carry everything alone. This isn't spiritual bypassing. It's not pretending it doesn't hurt. It's allowing pain to become wisdom instead of only becoming bitterness. And that's a real choice, even if it's a small one made quietly. Seed. 5. Practice gratitude without forcing cheerfulness. The fifth seed can be misunderstood. Gratitude isn't pretending everything is great. It isn't denial. It's training attention. Because the mind naturally leans toward what's wrong, especially when we've been hurt, especially when we've lived through enough life to know things can fall apart. So gratitude is a way of saying, yes, I see what's painful, and I also want to see what's still here. In practical terms, it can be very small. At the start or end of a day, you might let your mind touch 3 simple things: a warm blanket, a good glass of water, a text from someone who cares. The fact that you made it through a hard day, not because these erase suffering, but because they keep the mind from being imprisoned by suffering. And for many people, this becomes especially powerful in difficult seasons, because even then, something gentle is still present. Not always, not perfectly, but often enough to keep you from collapsing inward. Seed. 6. Visualize the person you want to be in the hard moment. This seed is less about manifesting and more about rehearsal. Think about this. So much of life is not about what we believe in quiet moments. It's about who we become under pressure. So visualization is a way to train the mind before the pressure arrives. You might picture a situation that usually triggers you: a tense conversation, a stressful appointment, a family gathering, and you gently imagine yourself showing up differently. Not as a saint, not as a perfect person, just a little slower, a little softer, a little more grounded. You imagine the tone of your voice, the look on your face, the feeling of your shoulders relaxing, and in a Buddhist sense, you're planting a seed of a new response. You're telling the mind, this is possible. Over time, those rehearsed pathways can become more available in real life, not because life becomes easy, but because you've practiced meeting life with steadiness. Seed. 7. Grow self-compassion. This last seed might be the most important, especially for people who have spent a lifetime being responsible. So many of us have an inner voice that would never be allowed to speak to a friend the way it speaks to us. It says, "What's wrong with you? Why can't you get it together? You always mess things up." And the strange thing is, we call that motivation, but it usually doesn't motivate. It usually exhausts. Self-compassion is not self-pity. It's not lowering standards. It's not letting yourself off the hook. It's simply treating yourself like a human being who is living a human life. In Buddhism, there's a practice of kindness, a warm attitude that begins inside and then moves outward. A simple way to touch it is with phrases like, "May I be safe. May I be steady. May I find peace, even if it comes slowly." And if that feels too tender at first, that's okay. Sometimes the first step is simply, "May I not add extra cruelty to my pain," because pain is already hard enough. And there's another gentle Buddhist idea that can help. You are not a fixed object. You are not the worst thing you've done. You are not trapped in one chapter of your life. A human being is a process still changing, still unfolding. When you remember that the inner voice can soften, and when the inner voice softens, the whole inner world gets quieter. Bringing it together, one seed is enough. So if we put it all together, the message is simple. The mind mirrors what it receives. What you feed your mind today shapes what it looks for tomorrow. And you don't have to overhaul your personality to change the direction. You can start with one small seed. Maybe it's naming the thought. Maybe it's choosing one calmer input. Maybe it's one pause before a reaction. Maybe it's gratitude for something small and real. Maybe it's visualizing steadiness. Maybe it's speaking to yourself with more kindness. One seed is enough, because gardens change slowly, and then one day you notice the air feels different. Closing reflection, gentle, open-ended. Before we end, just take a moment. If it feels comfortable, let your shoulders drop a little. Feel the weight of your body. Feel the ground holding you. And ask yourself softly, without pressure, what have I been feeding my mind lately? And what would feel like a kinder meal? Not a perfect meal, just a kinder one. Because peace in the Buddhist sense isn't the absence of struggle. It's the ability to meet struggle with a heart that isn't always clenched. So wherever you are today, in grief, in stress, in transition, in loneliness, in overwhelm. I'm not going to promise it disappears. But I will say this: there is a way to suffer less. Not all at once, not forever, but moment by moment, seed by seed. May you be safe. May you be steady. May you meet this life with a softer heart. And just a gentle note, this podcast is for reflection and support. It isn't a substitute for professional care. If you're carrying something heavy, it can help to speak with someone qualified.